Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for Ask the Chiefs a Question. Today's question is an educational question. What's the difference between the Chickamauga and the Cherokee? Um, I grew up in Southern Baptist life. I was a Southern Baptist for years and years and years. Still am. I was a minister for over 20 years and in Southern Baptist life. And so I think I can answer this question um, relatively simple. What's the difference between the Cherokee and the Chickamauga? That would be like comparing a person of Muslim descent with a person of Jewish descent. They're not the same. Go back to Abraham. Abraham's wife, Sarah, thought she couldn't have a baby. So Sarah gave Abraham her handservant to sleep with, to have a baby. And she had Ishmael. Then Sarah gets pregnant and has Isaac. And two entire groups of people were born. They share the same father. But for us, the only thing that we share with the Cherokees is the land that they moved in on 1,000 years after we were already there. And so the difference between us and them is that they ain't us, using my greatest Southern accent, and we ain't them, using my Southern accent again. I know it's horrible English, but it really gets the point across. The ain't is really a good word here. We ain't and they ain't. And the way that we know for certain, not just trying to make something up out of the blue, the archaeological record really does prove who is who in this equation. The archaeological record shows that somewhere between 600 and 800 AD, that the Mound culture and religion, the Southeast Ceremonial Mound complex, and then the Southeast Ceremonial Mound complex cult was established in the Southeast Woodlands. It's also called the Mississippi Bottoms in a lot of the archaeological surveys and dissertations. Got a lot of historical dissertations, people's PhDs in the Southeast Woodlands. And so we know pretty close to exactly who was who and where they were. For the Southeast Ceremonial Mound Complex, we have to look at what was the Ceremonial Mound Complex. That's the religion and culture of the Southeast Woodland Indians. And what I mean by the Southeast Woodland Indians would have been the Chickamauga, who are called the Tiscamogee, the Choctaw, the Creek, the Natchez, and the Seminole. Did leave out the Chickasaw on purpose. Virginia in the 1700s signed a declaration declaring all that the Chickasaw were white. And so I have to be careful who I include in what because of certain treaties. I do not include the Cherokee because they were still in the Northeast, actually the North. They were in the Great Lakes region. And so in 600 to 800, you have this ceremonial mound people coming to the forefront in the Southeast Woodlands. If you trace where all of the major mound complexes are, you will find that there's one in Spiro, Oklahoma, called the Spiro Mounds. It's part of the mound building culture. If you go to Cahokia, right across the river from St. Louis, you find the the ceremonial mound complex there. It's called the Knob. The largest ceremonial mound complex in North America at the time of its zenith. It was larger than London at the same time frame. Then in the southeast, along the Tennessee River, you have mounds being built all along the Tennessee, along the Cumberland, along the Little Tennessee, the Savannah. You have Etowah being built. Then you have all the mounds that go up into the North Carolina region on the rivers. A few into the South Carolina region, but mostly along the Tennessee and Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. So we kind of have an idea of who's who and where's where. Then around 1650s, the Beaver Wars start with the Iroquois Confederacy up near the Great Lakes. Then at the end of the Beaver Wars, a group of Huron and Erie Lake people are booted from the Iroquois Confederacy. They speak Iroquoian, or a dialect of Iroquoian, much like here in the United States. Us Southerners, our Boston accents are just foreign to us, and that's kind of the difference. We really didn't, it wasn't an accent, it was a totally different type of language. When you speak to someone from Boston and you're a slow speaker from the South, you really do have a hard time understanding and comprehending until you start to get around them for a while. Well, in the 1670s, the group of Huron and Lake Erie people moved southeast. First, they move east and then south, come down the Appalachians, get into the southeast woodlands areas south of the Ohio River in the mid-1670s, down into the Tennessee River, the Cumberland River area in the late 1670s. And that's kind of when we have this emergence of the Cherokee meeting the Chickamauga. We had traded with the Iroquoians. We had traded more than likely with the Cherokee. We knew that Iroquoian trade language that the Cherokee spoke. We spoke a language called Arate. It's a Muskogean era language, not extremely closely tied to Choctaw, but in the same genre. Arate is then influenced greatly by Spanish and French. Then as you kind of progress toward the 1670s, 1680s, the Arate language is kind of consumed into a French, Spanish, Muskogean, Iroquoian dialect called Cherokee. And so you got this really mumble jumble language, and it is referred today as the Southern dialect of Cherokee. And from the last census, not the 2020, but the 2010, there were less than 10 speakers alive, and almost all were in their 80s. And so we know that the language is almost dead. We are trying to bring it back. But we didn't speak their language. They didn't speak ours. We could understand each other because it was kind of close, like Boston and Fort Smith, Arkansas. If you go a little bit further south, down into the bayou, it's completely different Southern language. And so you kind of have this idea that the people are completely different. Uh, the traditionalists, the people who held to the ancient laws, the ancient religion, the ancient culture, they were the Chickamauga. And at that time, there was also the Choctaw and the Creek and the Natchez. We were all holding to that ancient religion and culture, the Southeast Ceremonial Mound Complex. The Cherokee move in and they have no tie to the culture, the religion, the way of life. And so they bring in a more non-traditional way of doing things into our region. That's why there was a huge conflict. And that's why things really shifted quickly between the 1670s and 1770s. In the 1670s, they first started coming in, and it was okay. By the time you hit 1730, the leaders of the Cherokee and the Chickamauga go sign a treaty with Great Britain. 1760 comes along, we're already battling the Cherokee because of the way that they do not respect the traditions and the culture and the language or the religion. So you get to the 1770s, the Cherokee aligned themselves with the colonies. The Chickamauga aligned themselves with the British. And the reason that we aligned ourselves with the British is because we were taught by the missionaries, do not commit rebellion, because rebellion is a sin against God and is punishable by death. We understood punishable by death part. We were good at it. And so we understood, and we didn't want to be part of them because they were willing to give away land, which in our religion and our culture, our history, was punishable by death. We just did not do it. So we go a little bit further along. We get to the 1770s. The British are our allies, or so we thought. We hit 1776. We hit July 2nd. Christensen, under the auspices of the United States, or at the time, the colonial Congress, attacks the Chickamauga, goes into the lower towns and begins killing the Chickamauga and not the Cherokee. We have records showing that the men on these the raids into the lower villages said that they were coming through the Chickamauga Nation through the lower towns on their way to protect the Cherokee, the overhills. And so we really have kind of an understanding of what's going on. The Declaration of Independence was literally signed on July 2nd. They post-dated it to the 4th so they could get out of town and not get killed by the British. The colonials attacked the Chickamauga on their way to go protect the Cherokee. And that split is wide open at that point. The Chickamauga Wars begin, basically us against the colonies, us against the Cherokee. We never attacked the Cherokee, but we defended ourselves against them. We never became scouts for the US military, but they did. We never sold off our people, but they sold us out. We didn't kill off our chiefs out of vengeance. They sold off our chiefs and had them executed so they could get our land and take our power. We are not them, and they are not us. How am I able to make these statements so boldly? Because of the 500,000 pages plus now of archaeological and historical evidence that we have. The Congress of the United States told us that we had to go and find our anthropology and our history. Well, I learned a long time ago, you don't tell smart people to go do certain things because out of spite, and especially at my age group, we're going to go do it. And then I learned you don't tell a bunch of Chickamauga who are brilliant to go do something, because they won't just go do it. They'll do it in ways that you never expected. Instead of coming back with 40, 50, 60,000 pages of research, we went and came back and now we have over 500,000 pages. What can we document? We can document where everyone was at from about the 1500s. And how can we do that? Most of it's archaeological. Some of it's historical, written by the priests. And we know in American history, you don't question the records of the Catholic Church because they can be used as legal documents. And so we have those. Then we don't just have the anthropological evidence, we have the historical evidence. Where did we get the historical evidence? If you look at our website a lot, you'll notice an awful lot of it has War Department records, stuff that the United States should have burned if they did not want the truth to be told about what they did. We have evidence from the War Department records of mass murder, of genocide, of ethnic cleansing. We have that in the State Department papers. We have it in the Annals of Congress. We have it in the presidential papers. Yeah, you don't tell a bunch of Chickamauga to go find out their history and expect them to just cower and go, oh, how do we do it? Well, we knew how to do it. My second master's degree was in education and educational research. Probably really don't want to push somebody with those kinds of credentials. One of our other chiefs has a PhD or a doctorate. One of our other chiefs is an inventor with dozens of patents. You don't go tell a bunch of smart Chickamauga to go do something out of spite because they'll just go do it. Well, now we have it. How do I know my lineage? Because I can trace it back. Today's question came from a Morris family reunion. How do I know my line? Because I can prove it. How do I know where I go back to? Because I can prove it. How do I know that I'm not Cherokee? Because I can prove it. They weren't down here when my family was. And by golly, I'm not one of them. The chiefs of our tribe have family going back into the 1500s. How do we know? Because we know the land that they lived on and how long it has been occupied. Some of the archaeological evidence on their lands prove it. The one thing that I want my family to take away from this last weekend is we are not Cherokee. It was a great myth. It lasted a long time. But the Chickamauga don't deal with myths. We deal with facts. And the fact is, we are Chickamauga. We will stand. And Secretary Holland, I hope to see you soon. Y'all have a great rest of your week. I will talk to you hopefully next Monday. And between now and then, read some of the War Department records that we've been posting. Read some of the other histories we've been posting and find out how crazy the War Department records are for keeping stuff that they should have burned. Y'all have a great one. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.